everyone. Just a couple of announcements. Our novena prayers are going to be occurring next Thursday at 5:45. So please go ahead and send your prayers to prayer@heartwoodrefuge.org. Sunday, May 16th, Heartwood is going to hold a refuge ceremony during Dharma. Sangha members who have already participated in the ceremony are welcome to participate and repeat the 5 vows. And if you choose to do so, just please wear white and bring flowers or incense to offer. We continue to have a couple of retreats coming up. Zoom retreat on May 15th, Letting Go in 4 Stages with Martine Batchelor. And our first in-person retreat of the year, the Wild Heart Spring Retreat with Andrew Chapman and Mikey Knoll. That's May 24th to the 31st. And in both cases, registration information is on the website. Venerable Panawati is offering a new book study. We just finished What is Cultivation, and we will be starting a new book, which is to be announced still, this Friday at 4 o'clock. And every Friday at 4 o'clock. You can register on the website, and the book title will be announced soon. Thrifty Treasures continues to do well, and we also continue to benefit from volunteers. And if you're interested in volunteering at the store, you can work as little as an hour or two, or additional hours. You can just email thriftytreasureswnc@gmail.com. Fully vaccinated Sangha members are welcome to participate in the Dharma talks on Sundays here in the Dharma Hall. We will also have the Bodhi Hall set up for overflow if needed. So please join us here in person. We'd love to see you. And just again, if you would like to donate, you know how to do that. Just see the donation button on Heartwood's webpage. And please like, follow, and share Heartwood and Thrifty Treasures on your social media so that we can share the Dharma and spread the word about Thrifty Treasures. Thank you so much. And Venerable will be with us shortly.
You hold that. You hold it. So, so that's on.
Mm-hmm.
I touched it. I handled it.
You're
That's correct. Okay. So many microphones. So I promised today that we would be starting with a new book study. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So I like to not refer to it going forward as a book study because I want to express an idea around how we should practice the Dharma, and it's not so much from the perspective of a book study. You should heed the advice that the Buddha gave us in his teachings, and he said, rely upon the teaching, not the teacher. And then he told us to rely upon the meaning of the teacher. So in this sense, that when we're looking at a text or a book, we're actually not relying upon the written words, but the meaning behind the written words. And sometimes that can be very different. I have difficulty teaching sometimes in other places because I use a lot of colloquial language, and if they were like just interpreting or translating the word, I mean, what I'm saying doesn't make sense because the people often don't have like a cultural reference for what I'm saying, and so I understand how Buddha Master has difficulty in translating his commentaries into English because he uses a lot of cultural references that the Chinese fully understands, but it doesn't make sense to us. So it doesn't mean that it's wrong or that, it's just that we can't pull the essence out of it because we're not familiar with the language in a colloquial sense. And so also that we should rely upon the definitive meaning and not the provisional one. So sometimes we have to start with baby steps and move our way upward. For instance, I always refer to the idea of when your child asks you, where babies come from, and there's this baby growing in the mother's stomach, the mother's trying to prepare the child she already has for the fact that there's going to be a little sister or brother, and they're like seeing this grow, and they're saying like, where did it come from? I'm not saying we have to say the stork brought it, but I'm saying that we can't really get into all the details because they won't be able to understand it from their, a relative place of looking and piecing together the information that we might give them. Got toupee. Okay. Life is fun when you get old. Then we should, so we can understand that there's different levels of meaning, but not only are there different levels of meaning based on one's capacity to understand or to go deeper in something because of experience or even a high capacity for reasoning and coming to a conclusion, but there may also be a limitation in being able to understand something, like the baby not being able to really understand all of the technical explanations of where baby comes from. Okay. A definitive meaning means like from its highest perspective, but that could also include lesser perspectives or particular or peculiar perspectives. And if you're in a room full of people, you know, they're not all on one wavelength, all having the same experience, all understanding things the same way, all familiar with the same kind of lingo or jargon, you know. And so necessarily, people are going to be approaching the subject matter and trying to understand what you're saying from different perspectives, right? And some of those perspectives can be just like how I'm feeling about the world today. You know, you give me that same thing tomorrow and like, oh, I'm like, thank you for this teaching. Give it to me today and I'm not feeling it, then you might get a different response from me. You know? So we know that all of this is, you know, we understand all of this in a for other people's sense, but we don't, you know, always understand it from our own side because we want what we want, when we want it, how we want it, why we want it. And it's just like that's a naturally arising thing until it's no longer naturally arising. So we try to push things away or put them out of our view, but actually they have to fall off like by themselves, because they fall off when something else comes in between that view we have and ourselves, our quote selves. When something comes in between, it drives a wedge. It shifts how we see and know and understand something. It parts us from each other. And then that falls away. And that which is a new understanding, a different understanding, a deeper understanding, a clearer understanding is fastened to us. And that process repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself until, you know, the ignorance, little by little, we become parted from it. We lose our friendship with it. Yeah. So the definitive meaning could be considered, they use the term the absolute, and I don't like absolute because it implies a fixedness that just really does not exist, you know. Because our map of reality is framed by the mind. And so I like the term maybe definitive, which has more definition, is more relevant, you know, is more useful, provides a level of complexity that allows for different ways of understanding or knowing something, you know. And when all of these get piled on, added, then you know, it's funny the things you think about. Like in my early days, not now, but I used to smoke marijuana, right? And we like smoked the leaves. I don't think they even bother with the leaves now. But the thing is, the plants like had, you know, it had a bud and it, you know, like had like a head. But now they have like 10 heads on one on one stem or one stalk. And I'm always thinking about the difference. Like I was at a friend's house and she had some chocolate in the refrigerator and a candy bar, and I, you know, I love chocolate, not so much anymore now. I'm actually getting pretty free of it. So my diabetes is getting better. It's just not liking chocolate so much. You know, simple, isn't it? But it was not simple for me. For 20 years, it was very difficult to give up the chocolate. I chose the diabetes. And so I ate a piece of it, you know. It was just one little square I ate. But I called her about 45 minutes later. I said, "Sister, I'm sick. I think you need to take me to the hospital." She said, "What's wrong? What's wrong, Venerable?" I said, "I don't know." I'm like, I got double vision. You know, I'm like tripping. I'm like, something's going wrong with my head. And she said, she said, "Venerable, did you eat a piece of candy bar that was in my refrigerator?" I said, "Well, yeah, you know, I saw the chocolate," and she fell out laughing. She said, "Oh, Venerable, you just high." She said, that was, you know, and she's in California, and they have that's the medical marijuana that keep me straight. I said, "This is what you eating to have a clear mind. You're never gonna be straight." And she said, "Well, the way that it like zonks you off," she said, "it actually brings me to clarity." I'm like, "Go figure," you know. And so all I could do was like lay down, like hanging over the bed, head spinning, just. But I say that to say that when we are growing in the Dharma, you know, it's like going from smoking the leaves to getting to that bud, and everything becomes fuller, more in its depth, in its application, something like that, and as opposed to provisional. And provisional can be okay because we need provisional because we live in the world in a provisional space, you know. So holding and balancing these two, and leaning more towards the proper accord for one's station where they are right now in their life. So sometimes we make a mistake trying to apply principles that we are not ready for, and we say that they are high and holy and unachievable. It's just like, but no, I understand what that is, and I know what that takes, and right now, I'm just not committed to that. I mean, like, we could just be right there with that, and that is more honest than pretending to live in a space that we know we're like from an interior, we're not in that space. Not only are we not in it, we're not trying to be in it, you know. So this whole idea of just really being comfortable in one's clothes, or comfortable in one's shoes, or comfortable in oneself is so important for us to be able to go further, to be able to take the next step. I always say, like, I'm not preaching the Dharma on anybody, because I know how that feels. When I was in church every Sunday, the message was on me, you know. And so I just got one day and I asked the preacher, "Would you stop preaching on me?" You know, but it wasn't really that. It was like, if the shoe fits, you know. And I was seeing that the shoe fits, but like if you don't tell anybody, nobody will know, you know. You just need to know. So if the shoe fits, I know I tell a lot on myself because I'm trying to set the example for how we should examine ourselves, you know, and how we should be honest with ourselves. I'm being honest with myself. I'm the only one I need to be honest with. But when I'm honest with me, then I can be honest with everybody without thinking, like, what should I tell him? Oh, what should I tell her? Oh, you know, and there can be the dialogue or the conversation, you know, just from a place of how it is. You know? And this is what, there's such a freedom that comes in this. This is what I'm saying. You know, we're really trying to be free of ourselves and what's in our mind. that's what the greatest part of this practice is, just being set free from the erroneous thoughts and erroneous views in our mind. Dina called me today, her 10-minute break at work. And she said, I just have to tell you something. This question number 4 in the Dharmacharya, she said, that just lays the axe to the root of the tree. You know, when I asked, and I mean, like, I don't know what the question is, you know, that I put in the assignment, but it must be a pretty good one. She said it was. And then she went on to explain, you know, and the question, she said, I said, well, I really don't. What was the question? She said, and she said, well, the question was asking us, what did we think about, let me see, let me try to get the question really clear in my mind. Oh, about the views that we hold when we hear a different teaching or a different teaching, and we're trying to evaluate that teaching. And she said, it came to me that in an enlightened state, every view I hold is wrong view. So if I'm using wrong view to evaluate right view, then that's not going to be possible. So what I need to do, instead of putting it up against my view, is just listen to the view and try to break it down and understand it and take whatever morsels I can, and in feeding my existing view, that way I will gradually shift or change my view to encompass a more a broader, more useful view, or I may uproot some view that I already hold. And she said, boy, that just set me so free today, you know, and it's true, it's like that. She said, that's the whole Dharma right there, you know, and she was so happy about it. But this is what I mean by when one has these little insights that correct a ditty in our mind. A ditty is like a wrong view, a wrong way of thinking about something, a wrong way of holding something, you know. And it it doesn't like really confront us, but like it like just pops up right there and does a, what do you call it when you're on that toe, a pirouette, something like that, you know, and does that. And you just look at it and it's so beautiful, you know, it's so graceful in its way of, you know, presenting itself to us. It's something like that. And that's how the Dharma comes. It doesn't come with a sledgehammer and like smack you upside the face or crack you in the head. And it comes, it's so beautiful in the way it entreats. It's easy to receive because it has a certain fragrance. We say taste sometimes, and it's the taste of freedom. And with that taste of freedom is also a certain kind of joy that one knows one could never have garnered for oneself. And yet, that joy has made itself an offering to you. It's something like this. And when it comes in this way, it's not forced. When it comes in this way, there's no sorrow with it. There's only a happiness with it and a contentment with the moment. There was a show that used to come on, I've Got a Secret, you know, and a person would be something in particular, something you would never imagine, and they would say, does it have something to do with this? Yes. Does it have something to do with that? No. You know, and they keep asking all these questions, and they finally try to guess, you know, what was so special about the person being there. One feels this way, like, I've got a secret. and it's precious, and they hold that secret. They're careful who they share that secret with, you know, because it's like giving away a great treasure, a great jewel. And sometimes it's say like, you know, when you know something, you gotta tell everybody, But no, these things one holds inside because of the value, because of the preciousness. And they're careful at who they share it with, who they dole it out to. I can speak freely today because my children were here on Mother's Day, and I spent yesterday with them, and they're on their way home now. I know they're not listening to this, so I could say something and not hurt their feelings. I could say this among Dharma friends, see. But I don't hold family in that way anymore in this life. And some could say, oh, that's too far for me, fine. But any closer is too close for me. And so it was great for a moment, you know, and then like I'm moving on. But no, they're staying another day, so now I gotta find something to do with them all day and play kissy face all day and talk about how much I love them all day, and which I did, you know, I did. But now I'm just speaking, you know, from a not a provisional point of view, but from a definitive point of view. And from a provisional point of view, they are mine, and I am theirs. But from that definitive point of view, they are not mine, and I am not theirs. But you have to be there to understand that. That's not an intellectual thing that you can wrap your head around, because consciousness can't, while it's good and all of that, it can only go so high. It's like the difference between having a balloon that's been blown up with your breath and one that's been filled with helium. And so part of the compassion that we hold for the world when something becomes clear is if it can't be clarified for one shouldn't give it. So I went through all the motions to let them know on their level that I love them and they are mine. But from the level that I abide on, they're not any closer than you are to me. And although they may feel like you're closer to me than they are, you're not any closer to me than they are. And there is a kind of freedom in that, to be with anybody, anywhere, anytime, for any reason. And not have the attachment and the weight and all that comes with what we are contrived relationships. But you gotta be ready for that. And when I say ready for it, I mean you have to really see the suffering inherent, the craving, the clinging, the worrying, the, you know, whatever you do. I have people in our Sangha that's 80 years old still trying to control their children because the children are not doing what they want them to do. I'm like, do whatever you want because you're your own person. If you get in trouble, bring the sister. You know? So they call me. If they call me, I know to call back because they know not to rely on me. But if they need something, they know they can call. If they call, I respond as mother. and has allowed me to be free, to live my life, to make it meaningful in the way that I could plan for what comes next. Setting up a condition for the continued elevation of this mind stream until it merges completely with the mind of the awakened ones. Now, when one starts moving in those ways, it says that one is no longer an ordinary, run-of-the-mill, untaught person. But they move to an intermediate level, and a different kind of training is involved. So it can be 5 people together. They all look alike. They all dress alike. They may all be learning what appears to be the same thing on paper, but the meaning and the phrasing behind what is written is different. They're investigating on a different level. This is a simple thing to understand. And it has to do with one's own desire, one's own great wish. And we're so used to making the determinations of what somebody's doing and where they are by our sense gates. But we measure it through a different instrument. So it's not so much consciousness, because, we have an eye consciousness and an ear consciousness and all of that. But Prajna, wisdom, is something different than consciousness. Consciousness is within the mind sphere, and it has a particular mode or of touching or contacting information. Prajna is all of the information. So consciousness doesn't make up anything or create anything. It only registers something from a certain side, from a certain, perspective, from a hearing side, a seeing side, a touching side, a tasting side, a smelling side, a thinking side. Like thinking meaning, like we tie all these together and we form a picture, create a structure of how things seem to us, and however they seem to us is actually how they are to us, because that's how we receive it. That's how we relate to it. Yeah. But you see, all of that is wrapped up in this identity view and our relationship to an outside world or outside reality. Is everybody still with me? Okay. Outside reality. But Prajna is something else. It's outside of the identity view and the world that view has created. That's what reality is, seeing things as they actually are. It's just seeing things through the lens of Prajna, having apprehended Prajna, which has superseded consciousness and given us a clearer, more correct view. That's it. So these things, these 4 areas, rely upon the teaching, not the teacher. Your whole reliance upon the teacher should be only for the veracity of the teaching. And relying upon the meaning, not the text, means to not get hung up and caught up in the words, but to know the meaning of the words and the phrasing, and when and how to apply what to who, where, when. And to rely upon definitive meaning, not the provisional, doesn't mean to discount the provisional, but to just recognize that that's provisional. If I couldn't recognize, that provisionally these are my children and I am their mother, then what would be the basis of anything? So in this relative world, everything is like that. Everything is provisional. But to be able to see that there is a definitive meaning to things allows one to hold the provisional out of kindness and compassion for one who has not reached the definitive. So we shouldn't be so proud and so off-putting, like we can't touch this, can't handle that, can't taste that, because we're so high. But one remains accessible to all. Then if one himself or herself becomes too high, then they can bring themselves down. And if one's too low, they can lift themselves up. So we're constantly balancing ourselves. And as we do this, just the freedom to be able to do this is one can really realize their capacity. It brings a certain conviction, it brings a certain joy, it brings a certain enablement or capacity to enter more fully in that kind of skillfulness. It also helps to remove confusion because one knows what they know. And one has a great respect for how much there is to know beyond what they know. And one can recognize there's more that one doesn't know than what we do know. And that leaves an openness for us to know more. There's a song I sing, I'm not going to sing it today, but it says, I surrender to you. Sorry. I surrender to you compassionate wisdom, truth. I want to know more. It says, drench my soul as mercy and grace unfold, hunger and thirst. With arms stretched wide, I know you hear my cry. Speak to me now. Thank you. Speak to me now. Speak to me now, like a rushing wind. Peace comes flooding in. Anger subdued. Abandoning hate and pain. Now I am whole again. Then I can't remember the next word, but something renewed. But it's like what I just said about the words. But capture the meaning is what I mean. Yeah. That's the real world. That's where the Dharma lives, the Buddha Dharma. It is a phenomena of sorts. And this path, there was a scripture, I don't know which apostle said it, you might remember. It said, follow me as I follow Christ. It was like that. That's where I'm going. And I recognize that there's more that I don't know than what I do know. And the only way to know it is to become one with Prajna. And my whole consciousness renewed and a complete shifting of the structure, the nature of reality. All possible right here in this mind body. And so what we endeavor to do is to, yes, become familiar with the sutras and with the methods, with the different practices. And one may resonate for one person and one for another. But if I talk about something and it interests you, then one can try that one. So when we're listening to a Dharma talk, there are a few things that we should do. And when we're reading a book, and I don't know how many read the books that we had before, because sometimes I come to class and I didn't see any excitement, you know, in the song. I'm like, they didn't read that, or if they did, they're like dead as a doornail, because like I'm like, you know, hitting the rafters, you know, or either they didn't understand what they read. But it's not just enough to you know, to listen to or to read or even to memorize. And memorization is good because the more you do it, like it can drop into your heart. But it's not enough to just do that, because there's so many people who like can chant till the cows come home, and they're just as callous and cold and disconnected from compassion. But when one really connects in an internal way, it drops down into one's heart. And one can put it in practice and not just serve as an intellectual platform for our conversations about our views. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And when we are listening to a Dharma talk, or you know, we should practice concentrating on listening. But instead, we concentrate more on thinking. And in concentrating on thinking, we don't hear most of what is being said. Because you know how the mind gets when you hear one thing and you start thinking on that, like you just lost 3 minutes before you realize, oh, I'm thinking what? And then we tune back into the conversation. Now, what the mind does, scientists tell us, is that it doesn't hang on every word anyway. It like just leaps. Listen, make a long story short, you know. So it takes a leap and fills in the gaps of what was actually said but missed because we were thinking. It fills in that gap with something we already know. And so we end up with a distorted view or lack of understanding about what was just expressed, because it just got mixed with what we already know, and it created a new thing and bridged the gap where it felt comfortable, you know, either with me embracing that or with me rejecting that. And that's how we get so many misunderstandings around the Dharma. So learning to listen to a Dharma talk requires a certain degree of concentration and interest, arousal of zeal. And that's why these practices are offered, because they're designed to strengthen our capacity for concentration and focus. I had a really good lesson yesterday. I can't tell y'all about it. I told a few people today, but you just should have been there. And we can learn on anything. We can learn something from anything. In the most unlikely places, if the Dharma Eye is open. And the opening of the Dharma Eye comes from from a place of deep renunciation of the world as we know it. If I like the world as I know it, or if I like what I like and want the freedom to not like what I don't like, then I'll just hold on to this world as I know it. That's what I'll do. But when I can see clearly that the world holds nothing, that doesn't mean like I'm ready to die tomorrow. No. But it means I'm not looking for anything from it. Whatever comes my way, I make use of it, or I set it aside. But I'm no longer bound to it. Tied at the ankle. Try to move, can only go so far. But I become free to roam. Free to inquire. Free to get over things. Now you try to get over something, just can't get over it. Can become free to get over things. This is where the Dharma takes us, not to looking right on the outside, but to being right on the inside, because we are free and there's no place for Mara to trap us. And so that's the joy that comes with the path. It's a different type of joy. It's the kind that the world doesn't give us. And the world cannot take it away. I don't care what circumstance you're going through. I don't care what trial, what tribulation, all the way to death. Of course, I mean death of someone that you love. So I say to you, understand the true Buddha Dharma and understand the purposes for these classes. This year we're really trying to learn how to embody the Dharma. And that can be a little raggedy when we're just used to reading and talking. It takes a little while to even start to figure out how to examine your day-to-day activities and thought and speech. Because we think we're already doing that because we read in a book that's what we do. So, we read in a book that we practice the Dharma with body, speech, and mind. So I'm practicing with body, speech, and mind. And so I've been trying each week to give you some way to examine something in your life and encouraging you to keep a journal. These aren't like mind-blowing revelations for somebody else, but they might be mind-blowing for you. Setting you free here and there over this matter or that matter. finding that you have more strength, more resolve, more clarity than you thought, finding out that you were more deluded than you thought. Now, whatever you discover about it. And it doesn't mean like you have to go back to square one. Sometimes it's just a slight correction like that, just that much. Because when you get 10 miles down the road, it'll be the difference between being here and being here. So I'm stuck between two books. But I'm kind of leaning towards, well, two things that make the decision: the availability. Because I'm hoping, a lot of the books I have, they are like my secret stash. And now, it's like you can't take them with you. So I'm trying to put them out, but a lot of these books are out of print, so you can't really get them. But in this age of information, a lot of them are being put into, I don't know what you call it, like
digital format.
And then they're available on the internet. They're in some kind of way putting the text out there and making them available. A lot of them are in the free domain, so people aren't really buying them. So it becomes harder to get them because most people don't want to go through all that effort to make them available, to others. I mean, it's a great, to me, to be able to put books out in and make these free teachings available to people. It's a great work, because most of us are just not willing to do that for somebody else. But for a lot of us, we've come to realize that the most profound books are the ones not sold. I'm not knocking books that you have to pay for, because the workman is worthy of his hire. I will say that. And publishing ain't free. And if you didn't put into practice for the realization, and somebody had it and shared it with you, that advances your understanding and your realization, the same way you pay for your shoes, your house, your car, whatever, and your food, and your entertainment, then buy a book. So, hopefully we can get these, because if we can get copies, then everybody close can have a copy. And if you're not, you'd be able to download it to your computer, and we will study from it. But because we have an ordination ceremony coming up, is it this Sunday? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, the days went so fast. That's why you can't afford to be sick. You lose days. I wanted to talk about briefly this concept of, the homeless ones, which the Buddha and his disciples were part of that kind of group, wanderers. And the word is, it's a Sanskrit word that means diligently putting to rest. That's what the word means. Diligently putting to rest. And that means diligently cultivating, the precepts, developing them until you become the essence of them in your life. Diligently doing it though. Diligently entering samadhi, the stillness, the rest. Diligently taking up, making oneself available to Prajna. That wisdom. Diligently cultivating means not being lazy. It's not the last thing on your agenda. And most of all, it's not retreating. It means not being diligent today and being diligent tomorrow, but never slacking off. One can stop and pause and rest, but never going back. Because one who has truly tasted, where could you go back to? Even if you don't like where you are right now, where could you go back to? You can't unknow what you know. You can only not live it. You can't unknow it. It means to be intent upon cultivating or performing good deeds. That's why it says, that one gives what's hard to give and does what's hard to do. I mean, because all the time, you may not feel like it. But one girds oneself up and says, nevertheless. And then really diligently trying with all their might to fulfill their own commitment or vow that they made to themselves. Because when you make a vow, you make it to yourself. Even though there may be a recipient who also benefits from your vow, you make it to oneself. And so, practicing all good deeds and thinking no evil, that is what it is to uphold the precepts. Not so much a touch, not taste, not handle, not. But seeing what is the intent behind, what is the precept designed to garner in you, to wrap you up in. That one can be an exemplar. One can embody more fully what they say they embrace. So on one hand, there is like this discipline, right? But somewhere it shifts and becomes a flow. It's like whenever you're like learning anything and you have to train really hard to get it right, get it just right. But then once you get it, and there's a struggle maybe to get it. But you know when you got it because like the struggle is gone. You know when you got it. Because now it flows so naturally. That took training. Yeah. It took training. It took discipline. sometimes I think, like I told you, sometimes I feel like I have blinders on. Because I only tend to the present moment. I don't like go back and be trying to fish through that. I don't like do a lot of planning and setting up for that. The past is gone, future's not here. Everything is happening right in the now. Even if it's thinking about the past or envisioning the future, it's all right here, right now. And so, I just move like that, to the frustration of many others. But isn't that what we're reaching for? There's a kind of spontaneity in the present moment. But that comes after the Dharma and the discipline. As they co-join and come together, that little space where it's all together and all balanced, there is the flow. That's what they say in sports or something now, like the flow. It's a kind of spontaneity and a freedom that has been born of hard work, but that was worth working for. There is a saying and I'm closing now. I'm saying all this to prepare you because we're moving into hyperdrive now. And probably some are going to drop off. But you can't roll around in the basement forever, because nobody wants to pull themselves up the steps. We got to step. And we can't keep regurgitating the same thing because we don't want to change. You could just let a person stay right where they want to be, no problem. But we're going to be stepping a little bit. And there's three, it's called the 3 non-outflow studies. And it says, precepts lead to samadhi. That's where the discipline part comes in. And it leads to a certain kind of peace in the mind. If you don't uphold certain, that's the power of the vow. If you don't uphold it internally, you'll have a scattered mind. Your mind will be all over the place because you have nothing to anchor it. It's like training an elephant. First they put a chain and they bolt that chain to the ground. And it's a really big chain so that a strong elephant can't break it. And then later, when he is given up trying to bust out of that, then they remove the chain and they put a rope. Then as he tugs, he feels the rope, but his mind has been conditioned to think that it's a chain. And then finally, they put a string. But he will not break that string. If you don't have that kind of steadiness, that kind of stillness in the mind, doesn't mean non-activity. That's what we think it means. Non-activity. We walk slow. eyes down, looking serene, or glassy-eyed like I see nothing. But it's not like that. It says, but without that kind of inner samadhi, no matter what might be going on around you, you can't acquire wisdom, because wisdom comes from samadhi. I had an incident the other day, and I looked up and I had triple vision. Again, it was like just moving all around. It was not only three, and usually, you can get double vision if something goes a little quirky with your head, right? But I had triple vision. Like, wow, this is way different. And it was three, but it wasn't like just three. It was three and it was moving. That's what confusion is like in a mental sense. I was having a issue. But that's what it's like in a mental sense. All of the thoughts jumping all around your mind, and you can't have no clarity and no stillness and no peace. That, okay, I see this, I see this, I see this, I see how this relates to this, and this relates to this. And either I see what to do, or I'm just aware that something must be done. And I'm going to sit and wait for, an answer. Or I can move and do. But what came first was knowing how things should be, precepts, right? And when I stopped like the elephant, I no longer need a chain to hold me in place, but I could go for a rope sometimes, and even a string. And know that I won't move from this space. My answer is to be found here and nowhere else. Even if I don't have the answer today, it's in this very mind body that the conclusion of the matter must come. And I keep inquiring in here until I get the answer. And so, wisdom then comes from samadhi, when you can be anchored with a string. And these three are known as the three non-outflow studies. And that's what leaves one in a completely interior space from which to continue their journey. Relying upon one's own self. Seeking out instead of always asking the question. That's what not being lazy is. Searching for the answer yourself. In searching for the answer for that one question, you run across 100 things that you didn't know you had a question about. And by the time you filter through those, you no longer have that one question you had, because those 100 things weave together a new reality that made that question moot. That made that question moot. And then the journey gets really fun. Yeah. So, gird up. And I'll know which one of these books we can do. I'm leaning towards the Dharma in practice. And it was by Fra Naroda something. He got a really long name. It looks like about 40 characters to his name. So I just call him Fra Naroda, but it's Naroda Rang Singh Gam Bria Panya Charya. That's his whole name. And he collected the works of several masters. And he said, don't look for a literal treatise on these because I translated them from a place of meaning, not literal translation of the words. So I hope you got something out of today's preparation and that you're excited. So we have a list of the people who are on, right? Mm-hmm. And we will send this book. I'm waiting on one more, on a response from Master Zazi. And today she didn't respond, right, sister? Okay. Also, I have some news. You know, I'm always talking about, you know, empowerments and so forth. And so Master has invited me to come out to California to the temple for a while. A while is a long time for her. Y'all know I can't go. I know I can't go, so don't worry. I mean, I can't go for a long time. And I know I can't go this month, and I cannot go next month. But maybe I wanted to go before the Dharmacharya retreat, simply because I wanted to really have something special when I came back, but I don't think I'll be able to go. A lot would have to happen here for me to be able to do that. But then, if not, in July. And I can't tell what it is. But all I can say is it's something that we have wanted in terms of a more definitive flow of information. And but I think that's really all I can say online. But you'll know for yourself, wherever you are, when the tap is turned on. Okay. So may you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you and no danger. May you always be able to meet the inevitable difficulties of life.
I think Imani had something to say.
Yes, Imani.
No, I was just trying to find out the actual name, but I think we have it. I think we were unclear of the author's name.
You do have it, and that might not be the book. So
Oh, okay, got it.
But you all get an email this week. I have to see if they are congruent in their expression enough, because there's a lot from that one that I want to use that's in classical tech, jargon, and one that's in more contemporary. And if they will confuse, then I'll pick one or the other. If they, if I can figure a way to combine them, that would just be wonderful. We'll see. Okay.
Thank you.
But you said you found that one on the online available?
You mean me?
Mm-hmm. Or someone
No,
else?
no, I only saw the Sharangama Sutta that mentions the three outflow.
Okay.
The
Okay.
three outflow study. The three non-outflow studies.
Okay. So this is a collection. So it's a body of work. goes into the Surangama Sutta and some other ones. Actually, no, the other book does that. See, that's why I gotta have it all, because we want a piece of it all, right? Okay, I'll send a text and let you know. Somebody be responsible for reminding me to do that. Okay. So I think spring has sprung here, and anybody and everybody is invited for a spring cleaning day. I mean, a spring painting day, a spring gardening or weeding or hoeing day. If you don't want to bend over, no problem. I have hoes. We need to beautify. We have a retreat, our first retreat in a year and a half coming up. And as I went through and looked at the ground, you know, it's been a little bit neglected. It looked all right to us on a day-to-day basis, but I was looking through the eyes of someone who hasn't been here for a long time, and I said, oh my goodness, we have work to do. So we'll try to get you all some help from the larger Sangha as well. Thank you all, especially the Sangha here at Heartwood, for all the hard work you do. And none of it did you contrive yourself, but just the willingness to jump in with something somebody else came up with. I appreciate you so much.